we were pissing neon green every day.
The big ball of heat in the sky was too much.
I thought there was a bear.
Reality goes, yeah, fresco. That's what I'm saying.
Hey, everybody. What's up, everybody?
Welcome to
Welcome to
StouryTime.
StouryTime.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Storytime with John and Friends. I'm your host, John. Today's guest recently released a new single titled Marigold this past October with his band Year Over Year. Please welcome my new friend, Dorian Pintarick. Dorian, thank you so much for joining the show. How are you doing today?
I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks again for joining the show. Why don't you tell the people a little bit about yourself?
My name is Dorian, and I am the, artist, otherwise known as Year Over Year.
Very cool. So where did the name come from?
When I was 16, I guess we kind of discussed this a little bit earlier, but my last name's really hard to pronounce. So doing solo shows as Dorian Pintarick is really weird when you're young to put that on a poster. So I was I'm just going to pick a band name. And then I was watching an episode of Freaks and Geeks.
Okay.
And it's a misheard reference because they say year after year. And I was like, year over year? That sounds great. And then it just kind of stuck. So
nice. That's a fun way to come up with the name.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a, it's weird because I'm a lot older now. So being 27 and being okay, I still got the same band name that I've been using for a while, just feels strange because it's not quite the vibe anymore, but people seem to know it. So I guess I just keep using it. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to keep using something that you've built over time. So I understand. Absolutely. So where are you from? You're in Canada? Yeah, I'm from Canada. Initially, I'm from this place called Calgary, Alberta. Okay. Most people who watch hockey might know where that is. Otherwise, it's pretty foreign. It's north of Idaho. But I live currently in Vancouver, British Columbia, which is on the north of Seattle. How cold is it there right now? Right now, it's pretty warm. It's really? Pretty reasonable. Yeah, in Vancouver, it's Vancouver, Victoria, the West Coast. It's fairly warm. Everywhere else, it's snowing. Yeah, I'm in Buffalo, New York. So okay, yeah. I mean, we've already. I'm not kidding. We've already had over 3 feet of snow. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, and actually, there's a lake effect snow advisory for tomorrow through Friday for another 20 inches. So. Oh man. It just is what it is, man. That's Buffalo. Yeah, you're basically as Canadian, probably more Canadian than me at this point. I don't know if I'm more Canadian, but I can literally get to Canada in about 10 minutes from my house. Okay, so you're right on the border. Yeah, I mean, that's Buffalo. Buffalo, there's Lake Erie shares, Same. Yeah, waterfront. We stopped in Buffalo. I toured with this band called Youth Fountain in January, and we stopped at Strongheart. Okay. And that was a great vegan spot. I'm not really vegan, but I was this food is slaps. Hell yeah. I love that. So I want to talk a little bit about the band and the music and everything. You recently released a new single titled Marigold. Yeah. Song's great. I really enjoy listening to it. What is your writing process like? I basically do all of the instruments by myself. So it'll basically it's just a acoustic guitar and me. I'll write a song through, and then I'll bring it to my computer, and then I'll MIDI out drums. I'll write the bass, guitar, and leads, and then once I have enough songs, I'll take it to a producer, and then we'll kind of hash it out. If the song structure needs changing or whatever whatever it needs, usually. Right. But that's kind of how those ones went. Okay. And then do you have a band that is the same members, or do you just have kind of friends that kind of sit in with you and play, when you're playing live? A bit of both. The band members that are currently in are the guys who are the most flexible right now, but also I've known Dave, who plays guitar, has been around for we've been friends since I was 15 or 16, so over 10 years now. So it's a lot of long friendships of people that we've played in bands before as well. And then nice. Yeah, just friends, and as well as people that are supportive, I guess, of what I'm doing.
That's great. Now, have you ever kind of written with them, or do you kind of just do your own thing and then they just learn the songs?
It's mostly just me doing my own thing, and then they'll learn. For the last, like, I still have 2 more songs to release from the last kind of sessions that we did, and James, who plays bass, came out with me to do the sessions, and he played bass on the songs, so he kind of had a little bit more input, but for sure the initial, like, okay, this is kind of the rough idea of what I have, and then I kind of just let him go and do whatever he wanted with it. So there was a little bit of collaboration, but for sure on the very beginning of like the pre-pro and stuff is kind of just whatever I feel like doing.
Very cool. So when you're writing, I guess I'll be specific to this batch of songs that you've recorded. Is there like a major influence or a main influence, that you've been listening to while writing these songs that may have influenced the writing process?
Yeah, for sure. Like Pine Grove's a big one, and Modern Baseball. And I don't know if I can talk about Sorority Noise, but that's like a big one that also.
Were they canceled?
I think they were canceled. Yeah,
I think everybody's been canceled at some point.
It's true.
I don't know anymore. Honestly, I have no idea.
Yeah, and it's like a rough one because I'm like, oh man, I still think these songs are good. So like,
yeah. Even Pine Grove kind of. I mean, he kind of canceled himself, which was that was a weird scenario, and he went and got the help or whatever he needed. But
and then I'm kind of like, I'm just gonna still listen to this. But those are kind of like the main ones, kind of on a little bit of pop punk emo and a little bit of some folk. Like I haven't really released the last one yet, but when it is, it'll be like, oh yeah, this guy really likes folk music.
I love that. Is it so when you release it, will you release them all as like an EP?
That's kind of what I was thinking. I was gonna do like a rollout where it just kind of led to an EP, and then lately I've been kind of playing it by ear. I feel like the TikTok era is a really strange era to be in, because at one point I was like, okay, I get it. I know exactly how I'm gonna roll these out, and then the next day it changes, and I'm like, I don't know if I really want to do the rollout like this, where you're spending like 4 to 6 weeks of just pushing it and forcing it onto people versus just like releasing it and then kind of doing the promo for it.
If I'm being completely honest, I have no idea how TikTok works. I mean, I personally, I try and like post stuff, but I don't. I had an episode drop today, and usually I'll post that on, Instagram Reels, YouTube, and then like if I remember, I'll post it on TikTok. Dude, it takes me like 2 weeks after the episode drops. I'll post it. I'm like, shit, I forgot. But it's TikTok is weird. It has changed everything, I feel, in the music industry.
Yeah, it's really changed. Like you've said it best. Like it's so strange where like one clip catches, and then all of a sudden that song is now like everyone knows it. There's like people that'll go out to see like a show just to see this one band do their TikTok song, which is cool because you have bands that like otherwise may not. Like I think, oh man, this is a weird one that I wanted to talk to you about because I was kind of thinking about it more and more. But like where I'm from in Canada, it's a really weird place to tour. Like the markets are so strange and they're really far away from each other. So like Vancouver to Calgary is like between 10 and 12 hours to drive to, and there's not a lot in between. So like small college towns, but not real markets to play to. So like TikTok's really great for that because like you can post and kind of get traction in these places that, if you're DIY touring for the first time, it's like, oh God, like, is anyone going to show like the classic, like you show up and play to the bar kind of thing. But with TikTok, it feels a little bit more where you can like kind of build like maybe somebody comes out because they saw you on the app.
Yeah, for sure. You can kind of target them a little bit too.
Absolutely. And then I feel like for bands that are getting like a viral snippet or whatever.
Absolutely.
Then,
yeah.
So
have you heard? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying it's strange.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I had. Have you heard of the band Games We Play?
Yes. Yeah.
So I had him on.
Cool.
And it's actually funny because his first, I think he said his second show ever was opening for my band like years ago.
Whoa.
So it was like a really small world, but that's just like a little, little funny thing about it, but which I had no idea until he told me. But
that's crazy.
Yeah. But he was telling, so one of his songs went viral, and that's how he kind of, got on Fueled By and then Pete Wentz's label and all that stuff. But he was explaining to me, he kind of just figured it out, you know. Like one day he posted something and his music was in the background, and then he woke up the next day and his song was trending #1 in the world.
That's
just from TikTok.
Yeah, it's that's like wild to me.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't understand. That's why I'm saying, like, I am old. I'm older than you. I'm old. Like, and I can't wrap my head around that, and I'm not even going to try. I'm not even going to pretend like I get it, you know?
I did go through, I had this, like, weird hyper micro internet niche phase where I was doing, like, those Midwest emo videos.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a few that had like 1 million views or like 100,000 likes or whatever. And that was like a really strange area to be in because like you kind of figure out the algorithm, but I found that it was only really working for the meme of it, not for people that were continuing
actually
to listen.
Interested in it.
Totally. Yeah. So like you would post a video and you're like, holy crap, like I'm getting 100,000 views on a video and it's just you like with it's like, I think you should leave skit above. And it's like, yeah, this is funny. And like, I love the idea of like making people laugh. Like I enjoy doing that and entertaining people. But at the same time, I'm like, this is really doing nothing for what I'm actually trying to achieve here, which is like ultimately touring. Right. So it's like, yeah, like kind of put it down and like leave it. But you do kind of get into like the trend of like, okay, I know kind of what the recipe is for like making something go viral in that sense. And once you have like the, I guess the traction going, it feels more like, okay, you've built now a following of like at that time it was like 5,000 or 6,000 people, and you know that those people are going to watch that video, and then all of a sudden you push it to those people are sharing it, and then it kind of just creates like a snowball effect.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely kind of see, like I can see how it works for when you're actually releasing music, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious as to like what it's like touring in Canada, because I've toured Canada, but I've only done like Ontario, Toronto, like, you know, the lower towards, you know, the east.
Yeah.
And that's just because it was easier to drive through Michigan to Toronto and then to Buffalo, because it shaves off, you know, 4-5 hours from the drive.
Yeah, instead of driving around the lake. Yeah. I think it's called the Golden Horseshoe in Ontario, all those cities in there.
Okay.
And that's like, I feel like a lot of bands from Canada do really well in that area because it's so densely populated. So you have like Hamilton and, oh my God, now that I'm put on the spot, I can't think of, but there's like Niagara and all those kind of smaller towns in the area that you can kind of play. I know that like Newmarket was another event, like city, town, if you will, but it's so heavily populated. It's kind of like playing in the States and like any of the more like New Jersey's right beside New York, right? Like it's not that far away to play those cities. But out here, it's like really hard to do DIY, and it's pretty tough to do like touring because of how far away the markets are. So like I kind of mentioned it earlier, but like Vancouver to Calgary's between 10 and 12 hours with time change as well. It's like pretty tough. And then in Alberta, that's like the province where Calgary's in. It's like Calgary and Edmonton are 3 hours apart. And then if you want to play, there's like sorry, my phone Siri's going off right now. In the middle, there's like a province, but nobody lives there. So it's like there's Regina and Saskatoon. And if you are desperate, you'll play a show there. But if you're like a band that's playing, you know, like theaters, you usually just use it as a day off and sleep there because it's like not really worth playing there.
Right.
And then Winnipeg before you get to, then you go south to like Milwaukee. But there's really like 4 markets here that are like big and worth playing. And then I feel like a lot of DIY bands will just stitch together what they can do in between.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it's pretty tough. And then for Canadians, you need a visa to play the States. So that's usually comes with a hefty price tag, depending on how many people you're bringing in and what your situation kind of looks like. So
does the government there kind of like, so you couldn't like sneak a tour into the States?
Okay.
Allegedly.
I have done it before. And we'll
reassess this.
We'll bleep it out because I was gonna talk about this, but I didn't know how, and I'm like, thank God he opened the door. But that was part of actually, I guess it's a good segue to like the first tour story that I had.
Let's dive right in, man.
Yeah, so like I started touring when I was like 16, so I was like pretty young.
Oh wow,
and like,
young.
doing DIY touring at 16 is pretty like not, you don't know anything. Like it's pretty bad, and like I didn't learn for a really long time either. Like I would just keep going out and just eating shit, and you're like, when is he gonna learn? Like bring a pillow, bring a sleeping bag, like stop doing what you're doing and reassess like how to be an adult. But one of the first US tours I did in my old band, and like a couple of the members also share like year over year now, like they helped me out. And I was like 19, and what we ended up doing was we toured with this band called Comrades.
Oh, and I think I've heard of them.
Yeah, so Comrades was like, they were a Blood and Ink band for a while, and they kind of in that era of like the Christian like label bands, and they were really cool, and they were like the best. Shout out. I don't think they're doing shows anymore, but they came up to Canada, and we did like Canada, and then they took all of our gear, and we pretended that we were going to Warped Tour. So we like went down, we said, hey, we're going to Warped Tour. The border officers like, I guess so. Like there's nothing in your vehicle besides like 2 benches or maybe 1 bench, 2 seats, and then like it's completely empty with luggage. And then we ended up sleeping on like obviously the bench, and then we didn't have a bunk because like that's too suspicious, so we just like slept on the floor. And like at that time I was also 19, so like a lot of the venues that we played were 21 plus, so we're basically like waiting outside the venue to play. And then we'd go in, play, come back out, and like obviously they're DIY shows, so it's not like we're really playing to anybody anyways, so it kind of felt, but it was like a cooler experience, I guess. I mean, if we got caught, it wouldn't have been a good experience at all. But
it's interesting because we've crossed the border with all our gear and everything, and never into Canada, and they didn't even ask us anything.
No, and I know for the sorry.
You're fine. Go ahead.
For the US bands that come up here, I know it's not a big deal. They'll ask a lot of the time like how much money and merch you're bringing in, or like how much merch you're like, in case they have to tax you. But a lot of the time like bands will just say like, oh, we're bringing in like 10 t-shirts, and they even when we were doing Youth Fountain, like when we brought we brought like a whole thing of like all the visas and paperwork, and we're like, yep, this is what we have. And they just kind of like looked at it, they're like, that sounds good. Like they kind of have it on there, I think they have it on their like screen when they scan your passport, like this guy has a P2, so we know that you're coming back in and out. But they didn't bother. They like walked around the van, see ya, good luck, have fun. And we're like, okay, cool. But like, yeah, it's really stressful, obviously, because coming from DIY, where we're like kind of going on vacation to the US and happen to be going to these local shows in different cities and states every night.
Yeah, it's crazy too, because what we used to do for the merch too was we would take all the merch out of the boxes, ditch the boxes, and throw all the merch in our luggage.
Yeah,
because then
totally.
they're like, oh, you have. I think one time they opened something and they were like, oh, you have 10 of the same shirt, and I'm like, I really like that shirt, man.
I love that shirt in size extra small. Why do you have that?
But at the same time, it's like, they have bigger fish to fry when you're, especially DIY, like no one knows who you are. You're not going to sell those shirts anyways. So it doesn't matter.
Literally, like I think we left and we were like on our way home. We were so stoked because we made enough money to pay for gas, and we were like $100 up. We're like, oh yeah, we still obviously have like most of the merch left. But you're like, yeah, like we came out on top. This could have been way worse. Like it could have obviously been like a shit show where like everything breaks down, and like could have had a really bad time, but instead we made it through. I think on that as well, like obviously it was a DIY tour, so shows are falling through left, right, and center. We were supposed to play in like Albuquerque. That didn't end up happening, so we played in Colorado Springs like 3 nights in a row. Like we just kept jumping on different shows in Colorado Springs because there was just people who were like, I mean, you're a touring band, whatever, like if you need help.
That's DIY, man. That's absolutely. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that, but I've been there. Yeah. Most people who've done DIY have been there for sure.
Yeah, you just kind of end up where you end up, right?
Yeah. So we used to have, I don't know if it was really a joke or not, but it was like a well-known thing in, at least in my friend group of like friends that toured. Buffalo has like a pretty good music scene. Always has. But it was like, where St. Catharines is?
Yep.
Yeah. So they did like a music festival every year. I don't remember what it was called. And like my singer, his band back in the day when we were in high school, I believe they played it, or maybe he filled in for bass with Cute Is What We Aim For back in the day too, while we were a band, but you know, he just went on the tour with them. And it was like I don't know if I don't know if it was a joke or not, but it was like Canada is so far behind on the music realm because they like still think Cute Is What We Aim For is the biggest band at this time. You know, it was like 2015 and you're like, they haven't been that big of a band in, 6 years kind of, like maybe I'm exaggerating, but still.
No, absolutely. And I think it's like a little bit, even when I'm talking to you about like DIY, I'm like, this is something that like this is what we see as DIY in like Western Canada, but because like there's not a lot of people doing it out here, it's very like you just have an experience and you don't know if that's like shareable until you meet people that are also doing it. But like the US, I feel like everyone's kind of doing it, so there's way more people, they're all kind of in it, and then they're like, no, that's like kind of what you just said, like that's a normal experience. And for us, we're like, out here, if a show falls through, you just don't go to that city because there's no way that there's going to be another show there because it's not big enough to like, maybe you're lucky and you can put together something, but you usually have to know somebody to like make sure that it works. It's like almost like the best way I could compare it is like playing like Boise or like Spokane, like kind of these places that are out in you go out of your way, or it's like a show that you're on your way from like Seattle to Denver and you're like, I guess I'll play Boise because we have to stop.
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of most of Western Canada.
Yeah. I
you're
get
just
that.
Stopping.
Yeah. I mean, it's that if you can find a show in that area, you're like, okay, this is just to get us to the next one, kind of thing.
That's most of like where we're from, is it's just stopping. But in return, like we have a lot of like, it's kind of, I do agree with what you say, where like there is like this weird lag almost where a lot of bands that are popular, they did their popularity like Citizen's a good example of a band that doesn't play Canada or our side of Canada. So like everybody in like Calgary and Edmonton and Vancouver will go see these shows because like they're still hyped on like Youth because they didn't play Youth or that cycle.
Just made it there.
Kind of, yeah. For sure the new records made it, but it's like the amount that they're able to actually come up and play is so rare that there's people that are finding out about it way after the record came out, and they're like, oh, I hope they play this, and it's like, yo, they're on like a second wind of a different genre.
Yeah, they've changed. They almost changed their name, I think, at one point because they were like, we are so different.
I'm like, yo, this is sick. Like, I love all of it, but I'm like, like it's definitely strange. Like, it's a weird perception.
Yeah, that's funny. So you shared a story already. I always reiterate. I reach out to musicians and bands to come on the show to share tour stories and their experiences. It doesn't just have to be tour stories. It can be really anything, like funny, any fun, scary, whatever kind of story you want to share. You got some more stories for me?
Yeah, I do have another. I kind of thought of like tour stories. It's weird because specifically with Year Over Year, it's like a strange. There's like two eras. There's like pre-COVID, post-COVID, and pre-COVID I did a lot of acoustic because that's kind of like what I understood at the time, and then post is like full band, but the amount of full band touring was a lot. It's just like very regional, obviously, because of what we just talked about. It's very like you play 2 or 3 shows and that's kind of a tour out here for me, at least. So there's not a ton of stories from that era, but there is a few from before and like previously on tours that I've been a part of out here when we were doing like a lot more DIY. The one that kind of came to mind that I was thinking of, which was kind of like funny and scary and like a little bit of both, is there's a college town in between. It's like kind of in the middle of nowhere, British Columbia. It's called Nelson, and they had this venue that we had booked, and we don't really know what to expect. We've never played here before. Again, one of these like gas station, what you think is like, we're going to stop for gas and play a show here and hopefully it goes well. And we get there and like the vibes were already off because like we'd already kind of been losing up until this point. Like it was good, but like people were kind of like, I'm getting tired. Like this is, and then we show up to this venue and they're finishing like a wake for a funeral.
Okay.
So we're like, oh boy, like this is the start to the night. It's a funeral. we all right, like hopefully we're gonna load in and be quiet because there's still like morning. And then we had like a radio interview. We went and did that, and we came back and we end up playing the show that becomes like sold out. It was really like this weird, like everyone there was hyped. The guys like who is like running the bar is like, you guys were great, thanks for coming out, I'm gonna pay for your guys' food, and then you guys like you can come stay at my house after the show. Classic DIY. We're like, totally, that's great, because we had nowhere else to stay. He brings us to his house, and it's on like a acre or two of land, and it's just a bunch of trailers lined up. And he's like, yeah, you guys can just sleep in the trailers. And we're like, okay, yeah, that works. Like, it's November, so it's like getting cold, but you know, we brought sleeping bags and stuff. We're like, we'll make it work. So we all kind of like pick our RVs or trailers that we're gonna sleep in. And at night, I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't do any kind of substance. I was just like, normal day. We go to sleep, and probably 30 or 40 minutes, I wake up and I see this like faceless man over my touring friend. His name is Sho. He was like doing vocals in the band at the time. And I just see this faceless man standing over him, and I'm like, this is it. Like, this is for sure the guy. Like, he's actually gonna like murder us. There's no way that this is real. So I'm like shaking him. I'm like, we gotta get up, we gotta leave. Like, this is crazy. And I see this like faceless man just like stand up straight and then just exit, like walking backwards through this trailer. And in the other side of the trailer is like the other like two other members of our touring party. And I'm like, oh God, like if he's already here, they're already dead. Like, it's over. Like, there's no way we're gonna make it. Like, they're setting us up. Like, we're gonna go outside, and it's gonna be like they're gonna have us like surrounded. I don't know what I thought. And I think it was just like sleep paralysis at the end of the day. Like, I was just like having a bad like dream. Woke up, I'm like shaking him. He's like losing it because he's like, what's going on? Like, he's trying to like stumble, figure out where he's at. And then turned out it was just me being silly. But
I don't know. It sounds like aliens.
Or everyone was like memeing after. They're like, oh, that's for sure. Like, it's haunted. Because like the vibes were already like pretty off. We're like, we're in a trailer.
Right. Listen, I saw Signs. I don't know if you remember that movie, but that sounds very similar to Signs. All right.
I just took the plot of Signs. I'm like, this would be a great story to tell.
by very successful director Night Shyamalan. Night.
Night. Yeah,
that's funny. That's terrifying. Also,
it was for sure. Yeah, like, and yeah, again, you're like maybe 18 or 19, and you're like, oh man, what did I get myself into? Like, in that moment, you're just like rethinking everything. Like, you're like, God, why am I here right now? We're like, also, we weren't like smart enough. I know earlier I said that we brought sleeping bags, but I don't think I brought mine into this trailer. I'm like, because they already had like pre-made beds there, and we, being young, we're like, oh, we'll just sleep in the beds. There's no way that this guy, like, in my mind, I'm thinking as like an adult now, I'm like, there's no way this guy actually like cleaned this stuff. It's just sitting that ever. No, they're just sitting here, and then two kids are gonna get in and just sleep in this like bed that's like, I think too, like, not our trailer, but the trailer next door was like leaking. So like, there's these things aren't like suitable to like really like like you shouldn't be sleeping in these things. We're like, oh yeah, we're gonna crawl in the bed. There's probably mold and stuff in it too. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's definitely not.
That's crazy. That's funny.
Not a privileged place, but
from touring allegedly in the US, what is your favorite place you've been to?
Oh man, that's a tough question. We did like DIY. We did the West Coast. With the Youth Fountain Tour, we did the full US. So I feel like I've seen a fair amount. I do enjoy, honestly. That's a tough one. I think Philadelphia is my favorite out of all of them. I really like that city. But I can't really...
what are a few memorable places and why?
A few memorable places and why? That's a tough question.
I thought I made it easier.
We played one of the cooler things that we did was we played in Times Square in New York. We played at, I think it's the PlayStation Theater.
Okay.
That's what it used to be called. I don't know what it's called now.
I have no idea.
It was cool. It was like a weird drop and go situation where we had to show up. We dropped everything, then we drove to New Jersey and we dropped the van off in like a Walmart parking lot. Then we had to take the bus back. It was like a weird situation, but it was cool. And there was actually somebody who walked by while we were loading in and recognized me from Year Over Year. And he came up to me and he's like, "Hey man, do you do this band?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I'm like not doing that right now." He's like, "Oh, cool. Like I'm a fan. I live in Brooklyn." I'm like, "Well, what the hell?" Like what really small world to see someone and just like connect with someone quickly about something that's completely not what we're doing there. So that's like kind of a memorable experience from like New York, I guess, specifically.
Yeah. Did you do any sightseeing or anything?
We did we did another tour as well with Youth Fountain where we're driving to Chicago and decided to stop at Mount Rushmore because it was just on the way. And it was like really late. I think it was like 10 p.m. We're like, we just want to go see like somebody carve faces into these rocks.
Absurdity.
Like, yeah, like the absurdity of it was, that's literally like, we showed up and we're like, this is crazy. Like somebody did this.
Someone did that. Yeah. Somebody woke up one day and was like, yo, check this out.
I got some heat. I'm going to carve faces into this rock. And like, yeah, it's crazy. Like, I don't know how else to explain it.
And we haven't updated whatsoever.
Yeah, it's just the same 4 guys. We're just hyped on these guys. I feel like in the West Coast, like we're pretty acquainted with like Seattle and Portland. So there's like common places like Powell's books in Portland that we'll go to all the time when we go through, or like I'm trying to think of other places as well in Seattle that we tend to. Is it Dutch Bros? It's like a big one in the Pacific Northwest for coffee.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like a very it's like in the US they have more of them. They're like coffee drive-through stands.
Okay.
And they're just like a popular one in the Pacific Northwest that I found is like we go to those ones a lot when we go through. Yeah, those are kind of, I feel like the big ones that I've seen more than once, or you know.
Believe it or not, I am a Tim Hortons guy.
Tim Hortons in do they have one in Buffalo?
They have hundreds in Buffalo. I'm not even exaggerating when I say within like if there's one within a 2-mile radius, there is another. It does not matter which way you drive. Within 2 miles, there will be another one.
Okay, so it's basically like that's what it's like in Canada.
Yeah,
they have them all everywhere.
Well, Tim Horton actually played for the Buffalo Sabres.
Okay,
so it's like connected to Buffalo, but not really.
Totally.
You know, it's just close to Canada, and they were like, "Let's make more money," and they did. So
I do wonder too if they're like franchises or if they're actually like
they're definitely franchises.
Yeah,
I graduated with the kid that his parents owned one in like the neighborhood I grew up in, and I worked at it, and they owned 3 of them by the time I graduated high school, and they were like, yeah, just to open one you have to have over $1 million in your checking account to be able to show that you like can afford this. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, I think I guess Dunkin' is the
Dunkin' Donuts,
kind of the equivalent. We definitely tried a lot of those like the first time that we went down, like all of the, but I'm like,
it's gross.
I'm like the worst person to talk to about this stuff because like I'm really clean on tour now. Like I just eat like salads. Like so it's like very like protein bars, salads. I don't really eat out. There's Sweet Greens in the US. That's like
no idea.
One of my it's like a salad fast food. I think it's in I want to say Southwest.
Okay.
But and they have some in California as well. It doesn't matter, but they're like one of my staples for that kind of like, it's like always that or like soup, I guess. Like I'm really try to be as clean as I can be.
Okay. So do you have a preference on Sheetz or Wawa? And have you been to either?
Yeah, we have. Oh man, there was like we had an ongoing joke where it was like Marry, Fuck, Kill, Sheetz, Wawa, and Buc-ee's.
Okay.
And then it always ended with I'm fucking that beaver.
We just found our clip. Oh, that's great.
But I think I'm pretty sure it's Sheets. That's the one that I'm like strong, because that's the one with the avocado toast, I believe. Or do they both
I have no idea. I've never had like anything healthy at these places. It's always been like the fucking disgusting hot dogs with the nacho cheese or whatever for like $2.
I'm pretty sure it was Sheets. Like Sheets was the one that like was there for me, I guess. Like
when times got tough.
Yeah, I think we played in New Jersey, and there was like there's a venue in New Jersey that's kind of out of the way. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. Starland, I want to say.
Yeah, I have no idea. We always did the DIY spot, so I have no idea.
This one was so like it's a very cool venue, and I remember it being very popular. And there's nothing near it, but there is a Sheets, and I remember being like, yeah, this is the one that I'm gonna like. I guess this is the only place I'm eating, but it also had stuff that I could eat. But I found at all of them, they all have in the States they have this product called Legendary. It's like the protein product.
Okay.
And they have like Pop-Tarts and chips and like all these kind of like junk foods that I enjoy. And I'll like actually go to like Target in the States here, because it's like we're not very far either from the border. Like we're not 5 minutes, but we're for sure like an hour from the closest, like hour and a half maybe from the closest Target.
Okay. So
I'll go
not
down.
terrible.
No, it's not too bad. And I'll drop down and pick up like all the protein food that I like to eat from there. But at all those gas stations, they carry them. So like without a doubt, either Sheets or Wawa, I'm stopping because I know that they have what I want.
Hell yeah. I love that. I honestly, like, all I cared about and my band cared about really was beer.
Yeah.
You know,
valid.
Like, you gave yourself a per diem and it was like, $5 or $10 a day. And you're like, I could buy one beer with this, or we could all put our money together and buy a 30 rack and just kill it throughout the day.
Yeah. What do we
We'll worry about food later.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's like for sure DIY up here as well. It's like same thing. I don't even think, I didn't hear about a per diem until doing other tours that weren't DIY, because we were like, your per diem is just whatever's in your bank account.
Yeah, legit. Yeah, like I think we only had like 2 tours where we gave ourselves per diem, and it was like towards the end. So we toured for like almost 8 years.
Okay.
And I think like we went at it. Like we were out for months at a time.
Holy shit.
For a long it was a lot. And we didn't really give ourselves a per diem until like towards the end, and that was like just because we were fed up with not, we're like, we've been doing this for so long. How are we not like, we haven't taken anything,
Right. So. And then it's kind of like a point where you almost feel like, okay, I've been at this for this amount of time. Like, let's just start paying people. Something. Yeah.
I mean, the last tour we ever did was with Save Face before they signed to Epitaph.
Cool.
So, yeah, I mean, that was actually the tour that broke us. So we got home, we're like, let's just be done, whatever. But it played its course.
Yeah, and I think too, like from my personal experience, I've noticed that being in a band with people and everybody's contributing, it does feel really tough to like keep the morale high.
Oh yeah, it is tough.
Yeah, because like everybody's like in their own space. Everybody's got like there's only so much time where everybody's clicked in and like they all want to be doing it 100%. And then as soon as people don't see like things go quicker, then people almost kind of start to clock out.
I think at a certain point, like if you put so much into it and then you kind of feel like you plateau.
Yeah,
it's like, well, do we keep trying, or do we kind of just, take what we've got and, ride off into the sunset, And
Totally.
and we like us personally, we didn't really have that mindset. We just didn't want to do like, we basically were like, okay, we're not going to tour unless it's like worth something,
Yeah.
At a certain point we were like, all right, we're just going to wait till that one comes and we'll do stuff here and there. But yeah.
Yeah. I kind of feel like that happens with you over year a lot, because like now there's a situation where it'll be like I have to try and the hard part is like trying to pay people for their time.
Yeah.
And, like it's really difficult when you're not making anything. So like you're making a guarantee, but for the price of gas, like we just did 2 shows with the Menzingers, and for me to drive out from Vancouver to play Calgary and Edmonton, like I said, it's about 10 to 12 hours. So for me to do that in American is about, to drive back and forth is about $211.
Holy shit, dude.
So to do that, like you obviously have to have like some sort of guarantee. So like when you have those, they're like, okay, here's like what you're going to make for these shows. And you kind of like have to take that into account. And then like I drive a minivan to do these. So like I'll do like a trailer, and then to rent the U-Haul trailer is, also X amount of money. It's like 100 Canadian, which is probably, I don't know, 70 US. So you kind of like have to start kind of like putting together the budget where it's like, okay, if I sell this much merch, then I can hopefully put us up for like a hotel, because there's no way I can have people sleep in like a minivan. Like it's just not going to work. So like doing some of the shows is really hard, because like now if I want to, like if I have like a local show, you either have to ask friends that live in Vancouver, or like some of my friends, most of them that play in Year Over Year still live in Calgary. So like you kind of have to, kind of what you said, where you have to pick and choose. Like it sucks because it doesn't want to be about money, but at the end of the day, it's like for me to like physically get everyone in the same space that comes with like a price tag. So you kind of have to like, you have to be like, all right, is there a chance that I can make, enough money to bring these guys out? Or is there a chance that I can make enough to, even rent the space to have guys here? Like, there's parts that you have to think about. Obviously, I'm willing to spend money on like jam rental space and stuff like that, but to have people actually fly out or drive out is like, it's dangerous, it's costly, right? You kind of have to pick and choose what makes the most sense. So
absolutely, yeah.
Feels weird for Year Over Year to do that, because like sometimes I feel like I'm like, this band's not big enough to be having these problems.
Right. I mean, they're problems though, it's stuff that you have to take into account. With those Menzinger shows, how did you get on those? Did they reach out to you, or?
No. I guess this is kind of another story. It plays into like another tour story, I guess.
Okay.
Which there kind of feels like all of these stories are flowing into one another, but. We played a show with Free Throw and Slow Joy in Calgary as a local support. And unfortunately, like for that tour, the promotion company from Canada just picked locals. They're like, all right, here's some emo bands that kind of fit the adjacent in these towns. And in Vancouver, I'll preface this with shout out Cloudsick. They're like the opener that was supposed to be on the bill, but they ended up having a illness in their camp that wasn't able, like they weren't going to be able to make it work. So I had messaged the promoter and I was like, hey, I'm willing to like do it if you guys want. Like I'll make the drive. Like I'm happy to try and cover it. And they're like, yeah, okay, like let's do it. It was like 2 days before, so we had played Calgary, or even the day before Calgary. I'm like, hey, can we get on this? He's like, yeah, let's make it happen. So we did Calgary and Vancouver, and I think through that the promoter was like, hey, I have these Menzinger shows with no openers, would you be interested in coming out and doing those 2 as well? And I was like, yeah, that, absolutely. Like I will do what I can to make it happen.
Very cool.
Yeah. So that's kind of how it worked out.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you said you went on tour with Youth Fountain. Were you playing in Youth Fountain?
Yeah, I was playing bass in Youth Fountain.
Okay.
So I filled in, they did Story of the Year. So it was Story of the Year and 4 Years Strong on the first leg, and then Story of the Year and We the Kings on the second leg.
Okay. So when was that tour?
That was in January of this year, and then last year in October. So 2023 in October and November.
Okay.
Yeah. Gotcha. So I did that, and then when we finished, I was like, it kind of gave me more of like I want to do Year Over Year seriously. Like I want to do this now.
Yeah.
It was cool to watch. It was cool to be a part of. It was like, felt like a very professional like working environment. So I was like, I kind of want to take that home and like apply that to what I'm doing. So I was like, I'm just going to focus on this.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's great. Have you ever faced any altercations while being out on tour?
No, I don't really think so. There was once it wasn't like aggressive, but in Canada, I guess it's the same. I'm sure that they have the same things everywhere where like people hate each other's hockey teams or hate each other's cities or whatever.
Yeah.
But we were here in Vancouver where I currently live. We were just in like a McDonald's and ordering. Again, I was like 18 or 19, and just ordering our food. And this lady comes up, no shoes. This is on a tour, and she's a transient. Clearly, she's not having a good time. I think she's like having a bad trip, and she just starts yelling at us, asking us where we're from, and she's like, "What are you guys fucking doing here?" Like, we're like, "What are you doing? Like, are you okay? Like, do you need help?" And she's like, "Where are you guys from?" And we're like, "Oh, we're from Calgary. Like, we're just on tour." She's like, "Go home, get out of here. Like, we don't need you here." And I'm like, "All right, like this is a McDonald's, ma'am." But I don't know if that's like, it wasn't really.
It counts. I mean, it's it's an altercation. It's not anything crazy, but it's.
Yeah, it wasn't like
literally crazy. I don't know.
Yeah, it wasn't like this aggressive fight or anything, but it was for sure like one of those like, oh man, this is a weird. Yeah, but I feel like that happens like to most people if you're just out on a Friday night and you end up at a bar too late, or like the wrong McDonald's too late. You know what I mean?
The wrong McDonald's. My favorite is so I have a really sweet spot in my heart for Waffle House.
Okay,
we don't have any in my area. The closest one's like 3 hours away.
Okay.
And so when we were tour, I loved it because it was like, $9 gets you this massive breakfast, right? The all-star breakfast or whatever. And I was like, fuck yeah. Plus, if you go at night and you're driving through the night and you stop in, like, there's usually always some form of entertainment.
Yeah, totally. And that's what I'm thinking when I'm like, if you go to the wrong place, if you're at Waffle House at like 2 a.m., I'm sure you'll see something at any Waffle House. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Like there was one time we spent a lot of time sleeping in Walmart parking lots. Yeah. And we built the loft in the van and all that shit. And
totally.
We'd find a Walmart park, schmuck a little weird, and then go to sleep or something,
Totally.
And me and my guitarist were like, all right, let's go walk around Walmart and maybe get like snacks or something. And we walk around, we come out, sitting in the van, and the cops come and they're like, hey, what are you guys doing? We're like, oh, we're just settling down for the night. Like, we're gonna sleep. There's a loft, They allow us to do it in like every super center.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, and then they leave and they come back an hour later. They're like, yeah, you got to go. We're like, what? Like, you just got to go. We're like, but we're not. We're literally like in our jammies. Like,
you don't understand. I saved my weed for this. I have only enough to put me to sleep in the most uncomfortable position in the front seat, and I'm in my pajamas.
Bro, we scraped the resin for this. Like, what?
You don't, sir, officer, you don't understand.
And then they're like, no, you just got to go. They think you're up to something. We're like, okay, well, we're eating like Doritos that we ate from the store that we just purchased. Like, it's not like we're not paying customers, whatever. So they're like, all right, you just got to go. I'm like, where do we go? And and they're like, not here. We don't care. So they followed us until we got out of their jurisdiction.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And it was wild. They were like, they basically were just like, yeah, so there's like there's like a mall down the street. You just go park in the parking lot there.
When I think it was on that Comrades tour, someone had mentioned to us that you don't go to the Walmart 24/7 super centers because they were like, oh, that's where like the Juggalo gatherings happen. And
what?
Yeah. So the whole time we're just like a bunch of like, most of us are still kids. Like, we're still very young, and we're like, okay, like, we don't know what happens at these. We don't know what Juggalos are. Where we're in our small little town, like, this doesn't exist here, really. At least I didn't know about it. So we're like, okay, we stay clear of like Walmart parking lots like that are 24 hours because that's where shady things go down.
That is so crazy. That is such a Canadian thing. Like, they're like, the Canadians are like, yo, that's where the Juggalos hang out, dude. Like, that's crazy.
Don't go there.
I have never seen knowingly a group of Juggalos at a Walmart.
And I don't think we ever saw anyone.
Because it's not a thing. Dude.
No. And part of me is like, they must have just been messing with us. Like, somebody was like, oh,
100%.
Let's get them. And then we spent the whole tour just sleeping in places that we were like, we slept in like a park in Portland, and like trying to find like gas. Like, at that time, we didn't understand that you could just like sleep at like flying
on the
J's.
sidewalk. Oh, I mean, yeah.
Oh. Yeah, you can just sleep on the sidewalk. It's warm enough, dog.
I mean, that's what they. I listen. There's tent cities in Portland. It's crazy.
Absolutely, and like, yeah. So we just like tried to stay clear, but we ended up in like gas stations where like I think a lot of the time you'd end up in like gas stations that weren't truck stops. So you're trying to sleep. You're like, oh, this is good enough. Again, naive DIY. First time that you're doing a lot of this stuff, and you're like, the like lights are glaring, like super. Nobody's sleeping, and then the same kind of situation where we got like kicked out because they're like, hey, you guys actually can't sleep here, but then weren't like, hey, there's like a truck stop down the street that you could just sleep at instead. It's like, go find something else. And we're like, okay.
Yeah, no, that's wild. So you said you did a lot of touring pre-COVID. What are some of the main differences that you've noticed from then and now?
That's a good question. I feel like TikTok's a huge one. It's like a massive thing that I feel like changed. I feel like the environment, at least, maybe it's just my perspective, but like I don't think there's bands that are going out, especially in Western Canada, as much that are just like, we're going to grind out and do these like DIY, like build these DIY tours anymore. It's very like, we're going to try and build like an internet presence first and then go to that city once we have an internet presence. And then we're going to try and build like get a guarantee from the show and do things really proper and professional versus like the touring that I had done previously was very like kind of like the standard DIY thing where it's like, oh, there's a house or there's a basement that we're going to play at or there's a whatever. We're just trying to book shows for the sake of booking shows without any kind of understanding that there could be more involved, I guess. Like selling merch is like not that's like not your main focus when pre-COVID. It was like very, at least maybe, and part of that might be like my perspective as well, just like getting older, but for sure post-COVID, I feel like a lot of people are playing it safer, especially out here, which is cool to see because like when they do shows in like Vancouver or Calgary or Edmonton, I find that the ones that I've been to, I can only really speak for Calgary and Vancouver because that's where I've been more often lately, but I find that the shows are tending to do really well. And with like the TikTok draw and with like people like not as much now in 2024, but like 2021, 2022, when people are allowed to like come back out, things were kind of like, I feel like packing up a bit more. Rooms where people were more interested in it, right?
Okay. It's a good answer. What is one of the, if not the funniest thing that's happened to you or you've done on tour?
Man, I was like back and forth on whether I should tell this story, and I think it's funny, so I'm going to tell it.
Okay.
It might not be funny at all, and that's like kind of the problem where I'm like, oh man, this could be like just a total bummer or like not a funny thing. But the very first tour that I did for Year Over Year was like an acoustic thing, and I had just turned like fresh 18. And the drummer, one of my friends, Nathan, he played drums in Year Over Year and Youth Fountain, and he's kind of like, we're very close friends now, which is like, I need to preface the conversation with that because I'm like, it's like pretty funny because this is about the first time I've ever met him, basically.
Okay.
But now we're really tight, which is hilarious. He was moving. So we had taken him from Calgary to Vancouver as part of our tour, but he like tagged along because he was moving with us. He's like, yeah, super nice. You can stay at my house while you guys are here. Definitely feel free to hang out. You can sleep on my couch. Like you have a place to stay. We're like, that's great. Me being 18, I was more wholesome than I thought I was. I'd only really drinking beer up until then. And then I didn't bring any, again, no sleeping bag, no pillow, no toothbrush, no nothing. Like I'm just out here raw dogging it. Sleeping on whoever has something, or like wrapping up my t-shirts. So the first night, me and another touring party member was like, hey, here's this bottle of Jameson. Would you like some? I'm like, sure. So I drank like 3/4 of a bottle, and I had never had like hard alcohol. Yeah, I'd never had hard alcohol before. And as I'm like, all right, everyone's like shut down. Don't have a sleeping bag, so I just have like a hoodie. So I put it on my, like I called them hoodie pants. So I just put my legs through the sleeves and then pulled it up, and then I wrapped the t-shirt up.
Wait, hold on. No, we are not just going over that. Hold on. What did you do?
I didn't have a blanket, so I used my hoodie as pants, like sweatpants.
Wait, so was it like in my head? Let me explain to you why I had to stop you, okay?
Yeah, no.
When you said that, I was like, he put the hood up over his head, but he's still.
No, sorry.
That's. I was like, wait a minute. We need to
hold on. Back up, guy. What are you doing? What are you guys doing in Canada? No, I'm so sorry. I put the hoodie on. I put the sleeves that you would wear through your arms through my legs.
Okay, and then
as far as I could,
like to your waist or whatever.
Yeah. They're basically like a large pair of sweatpants with a hood hanging down, like a baby or something. I don't know. It was weird. And then I had like a t-shirt, but I like wake up and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna pee. I have to go to the bathroom. So I open Nathan's door and I walk into his room and I start peeing on his floor. And he wakes up and he wears glasses and I don't think he can really see without them. Mm-hmm. And he wakes up and looks at me and he's like, hey man, what are you doing? And I'm like, nothing. I'm just using the washroom. He's like, are you peeing on my floor? And I'm like, no, I'm peeing on these shirts right here. And he's like, dude, you're still peeing. Like, what are you talking about? You're still peeing on my floor. So then I like pull up my hoodie pants. I go and I pass out on his couch. And the like next morning, he's like, because he had told me after, he's like, man, I thought you were sleepwalking. Like, I thought you were just like, you woke up, you were sleepwalking, you walked into my room, peed all over my room, and then left. And like, I was obviously just extremely like gone. And the next morning, I like woke up, I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry. Like, that's the worst. He's like, oh, I'm glad that you brought it up because this is gonna be a really awkward conversation. Like, you're the first time I met this dude, and he peed all over my house and then just left. And I ended up like cleaning his floor, doing his laundry. I worked at like a bakery at the time, so I gave him a bunch of like coupons for the bakery because I was like, dude, I'm so sorry. But
oh man,
yeah, one of the more, I guess it was a little bit of touring, a little bit of,
that's hilarious.
Coming of age.
That is very funny. That's very funny. No, I'm just pissing on these shirts. That's funny. The fact that you were just like, no, like, why would I piss on the floor? Shirts,
yeah, man. Yeah, exactly. It was like, oh man, like it's like a litter box. Don't worry about it.
That's too funny. That is funny. Okay, what's when you are touring? What are you listening to?
It's a good question. Well, I built a playlist. You might have to bleep out what it's called, but I've built a playlist called This Shit Bangs, But I Bang Harder.
Hell yeah.
And it's a 15-hour playlist of Nickelback, Seether, Trapped, Breaking Benjamin, like very dad rock. And it's just like every song that you could ever think of, like Finger 11, like every single dad rock band that you could think of. And when I can't think of anything to listen to, I'll just throw it on. And it's like weird because it seems to get one positive reaction no matter what across the board. Like somebody will be like, hey, what the hell are we listening to that Headstrong right now? Like, yeah.
Is that to be ironic, or is it like, no, I love this shit?
That's the problem, is like it started off as like, this is ironic, this is so fun that we're listening to, like, I think it started with Godsmack, because we're like, this song actually goes really hard. And it started very ironically. And then towards the end, I was like, no, actually, some of this stuff's like pretty good. Like, I get why it was like very popular at the time. Because like nu metal kind of passed me. Like, it definitely wasn't the genre that I like. Growing up, I listened to like Title Fight and Touche and La Dispute and like the Tumblr era of like post-hardcore bands. So like I didn't see any of like nu metal, Deftones, Linkin Park, like a little bit of Linkin Park, but not
POD. Yeah,
POD. Yeah, totally. And then like, so part of it, like, again, like I said, started ironic, but then I'm like, damn, like you guys were kind of cooking like in the 90s. Like some of this goes hard. Like, what are we talking about? Like, why were we memeing this?
Oh God. As a Canadian, do you like Nickelback?
Okay. I don't mind them. Like I'll say it with my chest. I don't mind them, but I find that the older I get, the more I'm like, yeah, these like songs are well written. Whereas I feel like it's really easy to clown them when you're younger because you're like, oh, it's just like another one of these like dad rock bands.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I respect what they're doing, and like in the grand scheme of it, there's not a lot of bands that come out of Canada, so I'm like, a band that's even doing it, that's able to make X amount of, play shows in the US that do well. I'm like, good for you guys, because I can't do it. So like it's like very cool to see. And they're from Alberta as well, like kind of not where I'm from, but they're from like the northern part. Right. So again, kind of in the middle of nowhere. So I respect what they're doing, but it's not like a band that I'll listen to. I actually
bullshit. They're on the list.
Okay, yeah, it's true. They are on the list. I actually stopped listening to like music though completely, like hard stop, and now I just read audiobooks.
Okay.
So that's like another thing that I was doing on tour as well, is like switching between audiobooks and podcasts, and a lot less music, but for sure the memery, I don't know what you want to call it, hard rock one is like a big one. And then we listen to I try to listen to everything else but the genre that we're playing, or like because I feel like that gets repetitive, like listening to the bands that you tour with, or like the songs in the same realm. Right. So like I'm like a really big fan of Brockhampton. So like hip hop, I guess, as well, but like to a degree, or like pop music as well. Just anything that's like palate cleansing. Right. Yeah. I have a bad habit of listening to stuff that I grew up listening to, like that late 90s, early 2000s emo. The Sunny Day Real Estate, Get Up Kid, that Kids. The Texas Is the Reason, all that stuff. Like early Jimmy Eat World. Yeah, like that's what I grew up on. That's the stuff that made me want to do this, cool. For real. So like that is, if I listen to music, I'm gonna be honest, I don't listen to music very often anymore. I will throw a podcast on and kind of just do whatever I'm doing. Totally. If there's a new record that comes out or something, I will absolutely give it a listen. Absolutely. And if it's good, I will continue to listen. Totally. But there's so much of the same shit out there now, you know, and it's not like, what are you releasing that makes me want to listen to you and not the next guy or the guy before you, Absolutely. And there's like, I feel like there's also like bands where I'll listen to like, they have a single for a reason. It's like the big Spotify, whatever. That's the one that has like a couple million streams. And I'm like, yes, this song goes crazy. And I love that you guys released this. And I'll definitely listen to this when it comes up. But I'm like, I feel like at this point, I'm also getting to an age, and I'm sure you've also, as from what I've heard, is like, you kind of hit a point where you're like, I'm not going to invest every ounce of myself into this band unless I really feel passionately about like maybe a whole record that you released or a whole project that you're doing, because like, we all have other things to do too, right? Like absolutely, not everyone has the like focus or attention span to be like, I need to follow this whole discography. And especially when you're younger, I feel like, and you're more, what's the word? Moldable. And like you're still gaining like your, what genres you like to listen to and all that kind of stuff. Like when you like resonate with something, you resonate with it really hard. Like the band Cartel, that's like another band it completely missed me, but like a band like that, I know people that like latch themselves onto it because it's like it just happened to come at a formative age and it hit at the right spot. Or like I feel so bad because I guess I've been ripping off like Death Cab for Cutie for a long time without knowing anything about them. Like I just knew about
that's crazy. They're huge.
Yeah, that's the thing. And like huge. So like a side note, I worked with, this is such a crazy story that like is kind of like, man, I like stopped playing music because for a long time, like we did DIY from like 16 to 21. And I'm like, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. I like went to trade school and like became an electrician because I'm like, this is not, I don't think music's really.
I'm also an electrician, by the way.
Let's go.
Sorry, continue.
I love three-phase.
Neutrals get me going.
God damn. I kind of like gave up because I was like, I'll just become an electrician and do my own thing. And the band Oso Oso released a Unahan mixtape, and I listened to that record and I went, this is insane. Jade's doing the thing that I thought is not possible, where one guy can like play kind of everything and just write his own songs and then record them. And I'm like, this is the coolest thing. I like drove down to Salt Lake City to go see him play. And 5 years later, Billy Menino had reached out, who did the Oso record that I was in love with, and was like, hey, do you want to come and do like the songs that I'm releasing right now? And it was like this crazy full circle where it was like, holy shit, like the guy who produce these records that like kind of got me back into it. I'm going to like work with him on these songs that I was just like kind of like inspired me to start doing this again. And like that whole, I don't know where I was going with it, but the full circle of like, I'm so sorry. I lost my train of thought.
Oh, you're good. I threw you off because of the electrician thing.
Yeah.
So that's my bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. There was a point to the story and how I was supposed to tie it in, but now I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry. Do you have any pre-show rituals or superstitions?
There's like an ongoing joke where we don't wash our hands 30 minutes before we play. For like it doesn't matter if it's like like it's like a superstition, just it'll make you play worse if like we're like, oh, you gotta use the bathroom, don't wash your hands, just make sure you go play. It's gonna clean off all the like good energy.
like I really hope that no one in the band's pre-show ritual is taking a shit or
no, I guess that's a different situation. Don't poop and do that. That's not sanitary. I don't endorse that. But that was like an ongoing joke, specifically with peeing. I guess I should probably I don't know if like, because I think about that and I'm like, yeah, it was an ongoing joke, but like I was washing my hands for the most part. Like maybe the day that we were joking about it, I didn't, but like no, for the most part, like ritual, I'm like just stressing out about like why Square isn't connecting to Wi-Fi. So like, okay, that's like that's funny. Like, why isn't it connecting? Is merch ordered properly? Is my batteries in the? I started doing in-ear monitors recently. It's like a huge stress for me where I like set up and I'm like, is everything gonna work properly? Because it did 10 minutes ago, but I'm a pretty anxious person when it gets to like playing. So I'm like, is everything working? I hope to God everything's working. Is everyone's battery full? Is anyone need anything?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. What's in the future? What are you looking to do?
I'm gonna release 2 more songs. I'm releasing another song called Laughing on January 26th. And then I'm gonna release the last one from this whole session that we recorded last February, and then I'm gonna kind of release the last one from that session, kind of a part of like supposed to be like a single rollout, but I guess they'll kind of come out as an EP.
Okay.
And the hard thing with Year Over Year, especially as being like one person, is I find that I'm always kind of not sure what to do next. Like I'm always writing, but I don't really know what the next thing is to do. Like I'm like, okay, I know that I'm going to write some more music and I have more demos and stuff ready, but how I go about recording them is always kind of like up in the air. If I'm going to ask somebody to work with me locally, or if there's like a situation like how I mentioned where I'm able to go work with somebody else, or I've kind of been thinking about doing it more on the like self-engineering side and then sending out for mixing and mastering, because to cut some time out of between releasing. And then we kind of have some shows lined up. They're not quite ready, but in the spring next year we're trying to put some shows together, and it's kind of it right now. Playing Very it cool. by ear.
Dorian, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I love the music. Keep doing what you're doing. Good luck with the releases. Anything you want to promote, now's the time.
I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for reaching out. I really do appreciate just having a conversation, and honestly, just even talking and connecting was fun, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, everybody, thank you so much for sticking around, giving the episode a listen. Make sure you check out Year Over Year. Support everything that Dorian's got going on. Keep your ears open and ready for the music that he is getting ready to release. He's got 2 more singles. Check out the music he's recently released. Everything his entire catalog. It's great. We'll see you next time. Thanks.
Bye, bitch.